Welcome to the WION podcast, where we explore fascinating stories and ideas from various fields. In this episode, we uncover how a Victorian disease is suddenly back in the spotlight after Amazon confirmed tuberculosis cases at a major UK warehouse, sparking union outrage and urgent health screening. With thousands of workers at the site, the outbreak has raised fresh questions about TB, workplace safety, and how serious the risk really is. Amazon has confirmed an outbreak of tuberculosis, or TB, at its Coventry fulfillment centre in the UK. It is a bacterial infection often labelled a Victorian disease. The GMB union has flagged concerns over multiple TB cases at the site, which employs nearly 3,000 employees, urging authorities to temporarily shut down the warehouse. According to a report by the BBC, the company confirmed that 10 cases of non-contagious TB were detected in September and said it is coordinating with the National Health Service, or NHS, on a screening program. Tuberculosis, also called Victoria's disease, can lead to death of the people if left untreated. When people get infected with the disease, it usually affects the lungs. However, it can also affect the abdomen, lymph nodes, nervous system and bones, damaging the nervous system on the right side of the body. Sometimes, the nerve damage prompts insufficient oxygen supply to the brain, causing numbness in parts of the body. As a result, the hands can go completely numb, making the nerves feel like they are stinging. During this, people may feel pins and needles on the right side of the body, causing pain up to the neck. This shows that the disease primarily affects the lungs, but also the abdomen, bones, and nervous system. Based on the report released by the WHO on tuberculosis, the disease has claimed the lives of more than 1.6 million people in 2021, making TB the second leading infectious disease after COVID-19. Meanwhile, Amazon added that no further cases have since been found, and operations at the site are still being continued to run as usual while precautionary screening is underway amid an abundance of caution. In line with best practice safety procedures, we immediately followed guidance from the NHS and UK Health Security Agency and made all potentially affected employees aware of the situation. We will continue to follow guidance from the experts in the NHS and would respectfully remind public organisations of the need for responsible communications where matters of public well-being are concerned, the spokesperson said, BBC reported. Amazon said the cases, identified in 2025, were non-contagious and that it is working alongside the NHS and the UK Health Security Agency, or UKHSA, to expand screening measures. Dr. Roger of UKHSA West Midlands said tests are being offered to employees who may have had close contact with those affected. He added that the overall risk is low and that TB is fully treatable with antibiotics.
This is Dabu7, an earthquake update, as we've got activity in Southern California that has stirred some alarm. Hundreds of quakes hitting in this area in less than one day. Now, there's some things to know about this. This is very near the San Andreas fault line system. And if you look at the map, you can see where the swarm is here on the left in the left image. This is Indio Hills, Palms. And that area is right up here on the right map. So this swarm is coming from right around this broken fault area that connects to the blue line or blue cut fault system that is right on the other side of the San Andreas Fault. There is no other fault that runs any closer to the San Andreas Fault line than this one over here. And what you see right here on the page, there's a lot of smaller ones that they don't have listed or named, but there is the Indio Hills fault line system that sits right here that connects off the northern branch of the San Andreas Fault. Now what you're seeing is the northern and southern faults coming together, and they come together to form the main San Andreas fault line right here in southern Indio Hills. There was a big quake that struck right down here around La Quinta. Not right on a fault line, but on the other side of the San Andreas Fault. So the big quake and the swarms hitting on each side of the major fault. Something to watch. As I've said in the past, when it comes to the Salton Sea down in that area, whenever it has had record amounts of water weight, it has popped off with a big earthquake. Now, there was around a 4.9 quake that struck out of this, the bigger one down here, and people did say that it was startling that it knocked things over in their home, chandeliers were swaying, and that they felt it pretty good. So if you're in the Coachella Valley, if you feel any of this quake activity, let me know. Just wanted to give the heads up here, and a shout out to John for this info as well. I'll leave a link below on this. Enjoy me.
Flooding in Tunisia has killed at least 4 people after parts of the country experienced the heaviest rainfall in over 70 years. On Tuesday, authorities said all 4 deaths occurred in the city of Moknin in the Monastir Governorate. 2 people were swept away by floodwaters while a woman drowned in her home. Tunisia's National Institute of Meteorology recorded exceptional amounts of rainfall for the month of January, with the regions of Monastir, Nablus and Greater Tunis the hardest hit. It hasn't stopped raining since last night. At first I didn't pay attention to it. There were only a few small leaks. But when I got out of bed, I found my feet in water. Authorities on Wednesday suspended classes in public and private schools and universities in 15 of the country's 24 governorates. In neighboring Algeria, several regions have also been hit by massive downpours and floods. Algerian authorities said a man in his 60s died in flooding in the northwestern province of Relizan.
Heads up here for millions of Americans out there that are being told to stay inside. They have these advisories for toxic air going into motion. They're saying that the lungs can fill with toxins because of the situation at hand. Now, we know that there's a lot of pollution out there, but certain cities here seem to be getting impacted big time. Trying to say that no air movement in a lot of these areas is allowing these toxins to build up. But we can see across a good portion of the country, we've got this weather system in motion, bringing moisture from down over Mexico into the United States and hitting the cold air above it, which is going to create massive amounts of snow coming up this weekend. A huge storm, ice, snow, and all that. So in terms of a lot of these places seeing no wind, it's kind of odd when you can see the entire country. If you go over to windy.com, you can see the entire country is pushing this wind across it. So I'm not so sure if I buy that. I know we're heavily polluted, and I know that low wind is going to play a factor here. But man, I've never seen the alert this widespread, this large scale, from California, from West Coast to East Coast. California, Oregon, Los Angeles really at the top of the list. You've got the East Coast affected as well. So in Oregon, you've got a large area, including the Lapine and a lot of the national forest around that have seen AQI levels rise above 160 on Wednesday morning. Again, the pollution, the things that are in the air. Some are going to say, well, how did so much pollution get out here hovering over a national forest? They're trying to say that it's all coming from the cities, seeping out, and then with no wind, it's just sitting in some of these spots. I'm going to say that there's probably something else going on in the mix of this, adding to this, because this is an uptick that we're not used to seeing. Now, air quality levels out there are measured on a scale from 0 to 500. So 0 to 50 carries little risk. But when you get up toward the top, you have unhealthy for sensitive groups at anything between 51 and 100. But when you get up here around 101 to 150, that poses increased risk for everyone and very unhealthy. And for 151 to 200, that absolutely impacts everyone. They say limit your outdoor activity. So, as I was just saying, the levels in this one area in Oregon reading 160, that's in the danger zone. So, you know your area a little bit better than others. AccuAir warning that there was a PM 2.5 put on Los Angeles. And that means that they are 5.2 times higher than what the WHO recommends being safe. Yeah, so again, if you guys see any smog, any cloudiness, anything out there in the atmosphere, I would avoid it the best you can. They go on to say here that areas of Georgia, South Carolina, cities like Savannah, Valdosta, they are in the same boat. So, across the board here, and some folks saying that it tastes like plastic. The air smells and tastes different. This isn't like normal, per se, pollution that you see in India and China and all these other cities. This is odd. Again, all the factors just weird to this. If you guys are experiencing this, smell any of this, let me know, and where you're experiencing this at, more than anything here.
Immigration officers are being told that they can legally force entry into someone's home to make an arrest without a warrant signed by a judge, according to an Immigration and Customs Enforcement memo obtained by the Associated Press. This reverses years of guidance limiting their authority in deference to constitutional guarantees against government overreach. The memo instructs officers that administrative warrants alone are enough to enter a home using force if necessary to arrest someone with a final order of removal. That could pose a challenge to constitutional protections against illegal searches at a time when the administration is ramping up arrests in Minneapolis and around the country as the agency carries out President Donald Trump's mass deportations agenda. The memo itself has not been widely shared within the agency, according to a whistleblower complaint, but its contents have been used to train new ICE officers who are being deployed into cities and towns to implement Trump's immigration crackdown.
US President Donald Trump says he is dropping his threat to impose tariffs on several European countries, citing what he describes as a new framework with NATO on Arctic security. Leaving the venue of the World Economic Forum, Trump says he and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte had agreed to the framework of a future deal on Greenland and the Arctic region that will take his February 1st threat of tariffs off the table. He said that it's a deal that's forever, but didn't give much detail beyond that. The abrupt change comes shortly after he told the World Economic Forum in Davos that the US would not use force to pursue control of Greenland.
On the AI, there is fierce competition between the US as the largest economy in the world, 27% of the global GDP and 5% of the global population, not doing that badly, and China. And we know that that competition is very tough on AI. I know you're heading to a state visit to China in April. How do you see the US-China relationship moving forward? Are you able to combine this tough competition with also collaboration?
So I've always had a very good relationship with President Xi and with President Putin. Talk about, the larger powers. But I've always had a very good relationship with President Xi of China. He's an incredible man. What he's done is amazing. He's highly respected by everybody. And I do now. Now I have good. It was very severely interrupted by COVID. I used to call it the China virus, but he said, "Do you think you could use a different name?" And I decided to do that because why should we have a problem over that? But I would do that, and they were...
You're a true diplomat, huh?
I became a diplomat for the first time. Well, who taught me that? Marco Rubio. He said, "Let me teach you about diplomacy." Hey, any guy that gets approved by 100% of the votes, think of it, he got liberal Democrats and radical right Republicans to approve him. He's the only one. The next one was lost 45 votes, right? But he got all 100 votes voting for him. And at first I wasn't happy about it. I said, wait a minute, I don't like that. And now it turns out that the Democrats probably wish they didn't do that. And Marco has been fantastic. Marco, stand up, please. You have done a great job as Secretary of State. He's going to go down as the best Secretary of State. And Scott, and we have Susie, who's the first female Chief of Staff, and she's the best Chief of Staff, too. And I see Howard Lutnick, who I know spoke, and Howard's fantastic. Some of the deals we're doing are great. And I want to pay particular attention because we have Chris. And Chris, you got up and spoke, I think. He's the #1 oil man in the world, because I was going to put Doug Burgum, who's fantastic. I don't know if Doug's here. Is Doug here? Doug Burgum is fantastic. He said, sir, there's one man better than me. And he introduced me to Chris. And he turns out to be. So we're drilling more oil and gas now than we ever have by almost double. Is that right, Chris? And on top of it, we got a lot coming out of Venezuela. So anyway, so we're doing great. The country is just doing great. We have great people. Thank you. And I see other people. We have Steve Witkoff. We have Jared. I got so many people. I'm in trouble because when I go back, they're going to be people with long faces. Sir, you didn't introduce me. I got so many people. And we have a lot of the greatest people anywhere in the world. I know them all. So I won't continue because we'd be here all day.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. On Arctic sovereignty, we stand firmly with Greenland and Denmark and fully support their unique right to determine Greenland's future. Our commitment to NATO's Article 5 is unwavering. So we're working with our NATO allies, including the Nordic-Baltic 8, to further secure the alliance's northern and western flanks, including through Canada's unprecedented investments in over-the-horizon radar, in submarines, in aircraft, and boots on the ground, boots on the ice. Canada strongly opposes tariffs over Greenland and calls for focused talks to achieve our shared objectives of security and prosperity in the Arctic.
Syrian forces and Kurdish fighters have agreed to a ceasefire. This comes after a deadly face-off in the city of Aleppo. Both sides have agreed to a 4-day ceasefire. The 96-hour window is already underway, but the agreement seems to be already crumbling. Syria's government forces are saying the Kurds have launched attacks on an arms depot in northeast of the country. At least 7 soldiers are reportedly killed, while 20 others have been wounded. Kurdish ethnic fighters were backed by US in the fight against ISIS. Now with US warming up with al-Shara, the force that dealt a deadly blow to ISIS is left without support from Washington.
Well, I like the Kurds, but just so you understand, the Kurds were paid tremendous amounts of money, were given oil and other things. So they were doing it for themselves, more so than they were doing it for us. But we got along with the Kurds, and we are trying to protect the Kurds. That's correct.
This has triggered sharp reaction from Kurdish community around the world. Pro-Kurdish protesters gathered outside U.S. House in Davos, where Donald Trump reached to attend the World Economic Forum.
Kurdish people are protesting against al-Jolani, al-Shara, and are demanding that the Kurdish region of Rojava, which is currently under Syria, be given to Kurdish people and stop the killing on the borders.
Kurdish fighters have withdrawn from large swathes of territory in north and east Syria. This includes Al-Hol camp. The facility is the largest camp for captured Islamic State jihadists by Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. The camp in a desert region of Hasakeh province holds around 24,000 people. Frontline remains frozen for now, but both sides are amassing armed men in the Hasakeh province. Kurdish soldiers were seen taking positions at the rooftops. Kurdish-dominated regions transcend boundaries of various countries in West Asia. These include Turkey, Iran, Iraq and Syria, Kurdish independence is a long-standing issue in West Asia. The crisis in Syria has sent shockwaves across the region. Now, with the US aligning itself with Ahmed al-Sharaa-led government in Damascus, prospects of an independent Kurdish state remains in the dark. The Trump administration is showing first signs of scaling back from NATO operations. Pentagon is moving toe-to-toe in the aftermath of strained ties between US and EU over Greenland. Reports suggest Pentagon is planning to cut its participation in a range of NATO advisory groups. If this happens, around 200 million personnel will be affected. It will reportedly diminish US involvement in the alliance's 30 centers of excellence, which seek to train NATO forces on various elements of warfare. Reports say, rather than withdrawing all of its troops, Pentagon intends to not replace personnel as their positionings end. The groups facing cuts are those dedicated to the alliance's energy security and naval warfare, according to the Washington Post. Other than this, Pentagon is mulling over reducing its presence in official NATO organizations dedicated to special operations and intelligence. Since last year, the US military has pulled back from parts of Europe. In 2025, Pentagon abruptly announced it would withdraw a brigade of troops from Romania and cut security aid programs to the 3 Baltic nations that border Russia.
Well, this is how global panic begins. Not with missiles, not with sirens, but with the lights that are going out, and that too at 40,000 feet. Picture this: Donald Trump in airborne headed to Davos, the world's most powerful political gathering, markets watching, rivals watching, enemies watching. And then all of a sudden, something really goes wrong. Inside Air Force One, the unthinkable happens. Cabin lights flicker, then go dark. For a brief moment, the most protected aircraft on the planet loses power. And within minutes, the decision is made. Turn the plane round, go back to Washington. Now pause here because the timing really matters. This emergency return happens just hours after Trump issued a warning to Iran. His words were not diplomatic, by the way, they were not subtle. Trump said that if Iran ever tried to target him, the country would be wiped off the face of the earth. Strong words, dangerous words, the kind that echo far beyond the press conferences. So when Air Force One all of a sudden aborts its whole journey, questions, they arrive. Was this just a technical glitch or something else? But how can there be a technical glitch when a president is sitting? Was this a coincidence or a message? Well, the White House rushes to calm the entire storm. Officials say that it was a minor electric issue, purely precautionary. No threat detected, no hostile action. The plane lands safely at Joint Base Andrew. Trump stepped off unharmed. Another aircraft is prepared to fly him to Switzerland. Crisis contained, threat denied. Even the press secretary, she tries to lighten the moment, joking that a Qatari donated jet, it sounds much better right now. But inside that humor, the tension, that was unthinkable. Because you know what? Here's the bigger picture. The United States and Iran are locked in a pressure cooker. There were threats, counter threats, proxy war, cyber warfare, shadow operations here. And in such an atmosphere, every malfunction becomes a headline, every delay becomes a theory, every coincidence feels suspicious. So let's be very clear here. There is no evidence of any sabotage, no proof of an attack here, no confirmation of any Iran link. But geopolitics does not run on proof alone. It runs on perception. And the perception right now is this: the world is on edge, leaders are issuing ultimatums, and even Air Force One is not immune from speculations this time. Here's the takeaway, ladies and gentlemen. First, modern power struggles are psychological as much as military. Second, words spoken on the ground can cause panic in the sky. And third, when tensions rise, even a flickering light can shake the global confidence. This was not an attack. It was a warning of how fragile the moment truly is. So stay alert, because in today's world, the next crisis does not always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it arrives with silence. 2 Muslim nations, one sky and a region on the edge. As the Iran crisis deepens, something significant is unfolding quietly but very powerfully in the Middle East. Jets are taking off, Runways are active and military planners are watching closely. You're watching Times XP. My name is Dhriti Athri, and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have just joined hands. No, this is not just a routine drill. At a time when tensions around Iran are rising, Pakistan's Air Force has landed in Saudi Arabia to take part in a major multinational military exercise. Not symbolic, not small. This is a full-scale aerial combat drill involving 10 countries. And wait, the timing? That matters. Here's what really happened. On January 19, a contingent of Pakistan Air Force arrived at King Abdulaziz Air Base in Saudi Arabia. They didn't come empty-handed though. Pakistan bought its F-16 Block 52 fighter jets, frontline aircraft, battle-tested and built for real combat scenario. Well, this was confirmed by Pakistan's military media wing, ISPR. The exercise has a name though and a message too. It is called Spears of Victory 2026. Even the name is sharp, right? Well, this is not about paperwork. It's about power projection. And who all are in the sky? Let's talk about that. It's not just Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Joining them are air forces from France, Italy, Greece, Qatar, Bahrain, Jordan, the United Kingdom, even the United States. East is meeting West. NATO is meeting the Gulf, and the Muslim nations stand at the center. Now that makes this particular exercise geopolitically heavy, right? Wait, what are they practicing? Not ceremonial fly-pasts. This particular drill, it focuses on large-scale force deployment, nighttime air combat, advanced electronic warfare, integrated intelligence, surveillance, etc. In fact, complex multi-nation combat missions. Basically, in simple words, how to fight together in real-world scenario. This really matters because the Middle East, it is already tensed. Iran is under a lot of pressure. Israel is on high alert. The US has forces across the region. And now a powerful coalition of Air Force is practicing how to operate as one unit. This sends a signal without saying a word. Pakistan's quiet show of strength. But wait, there's another detail that most of the people will miss, but militaries will not. Pakistan's F-16s flew directly from their home bases in Pakistan to Saudi Arabia. There were no stops, no staging at all. That demonstrates long-range strike and deployment capability here. In military language, that means that Pakistan can reach far and fast. ISPR makes it very clear that Pakistan says that the goal is better coordination with partner air forces, stronger interoperability, strong operational understanding, building combat capability for future scenarios. But the timing, that always speaks louder than the statement. Here's a bigger picture. This exercise is not about Iran alone, but Iran is the part of the backdrop here. This is about alliances, readiness, and who stands with whom when the region shakes. The Middle East is not cooling down, it is reorganizing now. Here's the final thought, ladies and gentlemen. When nations train together, they prepare for contingencies. And when drill gets bigger, broader, and more complex, it usually means that the world ahead is getting more uncertain. Watch the skies because the signals are already flying.